focus, hear, taste and smell, is aware of touch, pain and temperature, as well as being able to tell the difference between his own parents and strangers, is the subject of much detailed research throughout the world. Some of these experiments were originally carried out in Britain by Dr. Aidan McFarlane, and this film tries to show some ways in which babies are able to respond to their mothers and to the world in general.
Babies immediately after birth, although they've had no experience of human beings from the outside point of view, are born with this sort of perceptual ability of seeing the outside world, so that they're attracted to human beings.
Frowning.
Did you notice when you spoke then she reacted to you? She looked up towards you.
Oh, she's heard my voice so many times inside. It's the first time.
A lot of interest now really is concentrated on that period immediately after birth, within the first sort of half hour or an hour after birth, because it has been noticed by so many people that the babies do appear to be very alert during this period, very wide-eyed and looking round, and then go off to sleep for a considerable length of time. I think that certain mothers also go through a sort of tremendous period of alertness.
The babies and the mothers are in phase with each other at delivery, and how the mother is incredibly alert and how the baby is incredibly alert. And it's marvellous when the baby starts looking around. I mean, it may be an hour or so that it's got its eyes open and the mother can gaze at it and it gazes at the mother. An absolutely beautiful getting together time.
You can see how strongly
Yes,
the grip is by the whiteness. Do you see the whiteness across? You have this mass of new stimulus coming into the baby, all sorts of sounds, sights, which are entirely new to the baby. The baby has got to begin to sort of sort them out as to what kind of significance and meaning that they have. Everything in its environment in these first few days is an entirely novel experience for it.
How long does it take before they can
Begin to move in and out. By about 3 or 4 months, they have full adult vision.
Age 2.
You know, she really is having a good grip. And now look, she's opening her eye. Just move your face bring your face a little bit closer to hers. And just
Perhaps the most important research has been into the newborn's sight. Elaborate tests have shown that babies can see from birth and can focus at about 9 inches or 20 centimetres. Watching Jenny closely during the first minutes of her life, it's quite apparent she's looking at her mother and her new world.
what do babies most like looking at when they're born? If you look at the features, which is most likely to attract the baby, it seems to need to have certain features. It needs to have a lot of contour, it needs to have a lot of contrast, it needs to be three-dimensional, it needs to move. And you find, of course, all these features in the human face. The interesting thing about focus length is that 20 centimeters is just about the distance between your face and her eyes when she's feeding. So the baby seemed to be born with this ability to focus just at the right length in order to sort of catch their mother's face.
The thing everybody does from habit of bending down to look at a child
is absolutely right.
Is to put themselves in the child's face.
Absolutely. And the other thing that people do from habit when talking to babies is, of course, raise their voice and say, "Hello, little baby, how are you?" Men do it all the time and then turn around and talk normally. It is, in fact, the sort of high-pitched voice which they turn more to than the low voice. And somehow we instinctively know that.
They both seem to get over this very alert period, and both could sleep for a long time if they were allowed to. And then the interesting thing is that the next day or two, when the baby does feed, it very often has its eyes tightly closed and does very little alert looking around. I mean, it's either eating with its eyes tightly closed, or it's asleep, or it's crying. And then by about the 5th day, they'd start being much more alert again and have periods where they're awake and got their eyes open and are neither hungry nor crying.
Jenny was Liz's second baby, so she knew much more of what to expect from her. For mothers having babies for the first time, there are few relevant experiences to draw from.
Come on. What? What's that?
Of course, every new mother's way of learning about her baby will be different, but we want to show how one mother, Helen, gets to know James during the first week of his life.
A long time alert and awake now. Have you noticed just over the days that he's beginning to spend more time?
By the time he's 5 days old, James has already got over his sleeping period and is showing signs of greater alertness. For the next few days, we're going to watch the two of them to see how their relationship grows.
It's away, just about sort of 10 inches or 20 centimetres. How does it feel to have him staring at you?
Lovely.
We had gotten much better looking very closely at baby's behaviour and then setting up discrete scientific experiments on the basis of some of our observations to try and show certain things like, say, whether baby can recognise smell or what it likes looking at. But I think that then one needs to take that information back and then go back and have a look at the individual baby again and see whether that individual baby is in fact doing one of these things which we've been able to show by these careful scientific experiments. The first thing that we did was to ask whether in fact Helen thought that James really knew her at this stage.
I think so. Well, I've been talking to him a lot, you know, and he seems to look round. When the nurse was putting him to me, helping me get him onto the breast, I was talking to him and he was looking at me, although he was in her arms. So I hope he does. I think he might. I don't know.
The moments where you can actually test the baby are quite few, because either they're fast asleep a lot of the time, or they're going to wake up very fast and want to be put to the breast, so that it's quite difficult just at this sort of age to catch a baby when he's got his eyes open and is alert but not going to cry. What I'll do is I'll use a rattle first of all. He's looking over towards that direction. He's got his eyes open now. You see him bring his head round to have a look and see what's going on. Let's see if we can do that again.
It was quite apparent, and probably Helen has already noticed, how James responds not only to many sounds, but is also able to tell from which direction the sounds were coming.
Well done. Okay. Let's put your head back in the bed. During some of these tests, James' interest actually wandered off what we were trying to test. We may be trying to test hearing, and then he would latch on to something that he actually sees and would lose the hearing stimulus. But indirectly during this time, we were actually proving that he was extremely perceptive in many different ways. There's one trouble, is there's a lot of visual stimulus as well. That's it. Come on.
He prefers it when it's knocking on the side of the...
Do you think on here? You can certainly see his reaction, yes. Now at this stage, it appears that James, in fact, is spending less time turning to the rattle, but he does respond to the tap when I tap against the side of the cot. Now this is because he seems to have got bored with one kind of stimulation, then we offer him a new kind of stimulation, a new sound, and he responds to that. And this is known as habituation. For instance, if we present the baby with a loud sound, he may react to this by tensing up all his muscles and screwing up his eyes, and he may do this the first time, and he may do it the second time, but after a time he finds that this is not attached to anything that's nasty in any way and stops reacting to it. And we can show the same kind of thing if we use a bright light, that after shining it in his eyes a few times, he forgets about it and goes on sleeping. There, little blink. Good. And then we do it again.
This means the baby is learning about the outside world, learning that this kind of sound or bright light isn't going to harm him in any way, so he can forget about it. But if, say, a different sound were introduced, he would start reacting to it again.
That's very good indeed. Now, experiments looking into what kind of sounds babies like listening to, the sound has to have certain qualities. It needs to be intermittent, high-pitched, multitonal sounds. They don't respond as well to single-tone sounds as they do to multitone sounds. And again, all these are sort of qualities which you find in the human voice, and particularly in mother's human voice.
Come on. Look at me. Oh, you're poking your tongue out now. Look at me. Come on. He cried this morning when I walked into the room speaking.
Did he? As if...
Yeah, and he was asleep. He sort of dropped off.
Yes.
This was halfway through his feed. And when he heard my voice, he started
crying.
crying.
And do you think he thought, oh, there's Mummy, I haven't finished my feed yet?
To think he did.
James. Yes, all right. Hello. We'll put him there. Now, you see?
James.
Do you see how he turned his head towards you as soon as you spoke? The problem is, at this stage, is that babies do seem to sleep most of the time, and it's very hard to find those moments when he is awake and in a sort of alert active stage or alert quiet stage when one can in fact test him. Most mothers seem to be more concerned at this stage, of course, with feeding their babies, and when the baby is awake, she may fail to notice some of these very sensitive things which are going on because she obviously is concerned about the more practical aspects of looking after her child.
Come on. Come on. Come on. Come on. Yes, there we are. He's looking right over towards you.
You are a good boy. James, come on. Come on. Look at me. Look at your mummy. James.
Babies use their eyes for looking towards sounds as well as towards objects that are attractive to look at. If you want to see your baby following your eyes really well, you can use both your face and the sound of your voice.
One has to get their, that's it, now get their attention first and then get them to follow. Now he's following nicely. Come on, James, look over here. That's good. Now moving my head quite a lot at the same time. Try and give him as much stimulus as I can. Now I've lost him. Now he's looking again. You can see that when he looks at me, he opens his eyes a little bit. That's it. Well done. Come on. Look over here. That's it. Well done. Now back again. Come on. Look at me. That's it. Very good. Well done. Now I've lost him again.
I think most mothers have had to deny what they actually saw and felt themselves. I mean, mothers have been told that babies don't sleep till 6 weeks. And so they had to believe it. So I think, yes, I think it's super to know all the clever things their babies can do because it allows them to believe in their own instinct to feel about their own baby.
Look at me. Hello.
There were times when just casually observing James and Helen together, and this was particularly so by the 6th day, that we noticed how aware he was becoming of objects in his surroundings.
What's up on the ceiling? What have you seen?
And that whilst we were watching him, he'd suddenly become attracted to the sight of something, and any amount of distraction wouldn't break his concentration.
Now I'm going to try a voice. James, 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 look over here. You're too attracted by something up there, aren't you? He's really latched in visually. Some babies are very visually orientated, and the others are verbally. It really looks as though James gets latched on to visual things.
That's a good boy.
He seems to be attracted to the microphone at the moment. You can see he's looking very much at it.
And yes, see the reflection.
And the microphone will in fact be a very attractive stimulus because it has very dark outline to it. Look at him looking at it.
He explains things that they can do that I never dreamed he could have done. You know, that the sight on the sight thing is the biggest thing, and I'm always looking at his eyes now when his eyes are open. I'm always looking at him and he's always looking at me, and I'm moving my head all the time, and I suppose I'm just testing him as much as anything.
As I say, to a certain extent the baby is already programmed to respond more to some things than the others. I've already outlined, you know, things it likes looking at and hearing, but it's still got to try and understand the significance of, say, when it looks at the mother that it's going to learn when it's looking at that mother that somehow then that face is different from a stranger's face.
James.
Now, James.
James.
James, come on.
Come on, look at me.
Look over here, James.
Look at your mummy.
No, look at me.
James.
Your mummy is more attractive than me, after all. Yes, it's her high-pitched
Do you
voice.
love me?
If I talk in a low-pitched voice, it doesn't attract you so much.
Don't look.
And you also know your mummy, don't you? Come on, James, look over here. Come on.
It's only through this close observation that we can really see the small exchanges between James and Helen and James and his environment. If we look again at Helen and Aidan, both trying to persuade James to turn to one of them, we can quite clearly see very quick responses to both their voices.
James.
Now, James.
James.
James, come on.
Come on, look at me.
Look over
But
here.
when James sees and recognizes Helen, the attraction of her voice and then her face holds his attention.
It's her high-pitched
Do you
voice.
love me?
If I talk in a low-pitched voice, it doesn't attract you so much.
Don't look.
Aidan used a very simple experiment based upon a much more elaborate test he did in Oxford to see if James could recognize the smell of his mother. The breast pad with the cross on was Helen's. The other pad belonged to a stranger. It's not just the smell of the breast milk, but the smell of the mother plus the milk which should attract James.
Person lowering this. Actually, could you lower that over his face whilst I hold him, and then just tighten the screw up there when it's each side of his face. Okay, James, darling. Yes. Okay, lower it right away. A bit further down, so it's almost touching his nose. That's it. No. He's testing out to see which one he likes best here. He did turn to yours initially. The thing is that they smell the smell of the breast and then they try and nuzzle it. And they get a bit frustrated because they say, hey, this should be associated with breast milk, or what's going on? Yep. He's got his nose really into it now. And look how he's sucking. I don't know if you can... You see, he's smelt something. He's really trying to get at it. He recognises his mother's smell beautifully. You see, yours is the one with the X on, which he spent most of his time snuffling into. He's still at it. He would still like to have a go. We reversed this halfway through, turned it around like that, and then lowered it again, which perhaps we might just try that on there. Okay, hang on. Now. And away he goes again on yours. He says, that's the one for me, I think. And he still seems to know which way to turn very nicely.
Good boy. I wouldn't have known him the way I do. I would eventually, I think, but I wouldn't have been looking for so much. I mean, even in the middle of the night when I'm dead tired and I'm feeding him, and I'm still looking at things he does. Whereas I think probably I'd have just sat there and fed him. I wouldn't have sort of been taking notice of what he's doing. It makes you so much... I don't know, perhaps it might not. I think it makes you closer to them. In the sense that you feel you know them more. Not that you could love them anymore, I don't think you could. So you are, aren't you?
Babies are sensitive to being held by their mothers, who find it an effective way of reassuring them. These very close observations by the mother are so important because, first of all, it makes it much more interesting for a mother if she can look at her baby and know that it can, in fact, recognize her smell, that it's looking at her and listening to her voice. And from this gradual understanding of each other, the mother can begin to notice ways in which her baby is trying to tell her things.
The little noises he makes when he wants something. You know, I know what he wants, or I know what he's going to do. And if he's feeding and he wants to dirty his nappy, he sort of grunts and tells me that he wants it. So it seems to me that...
Good. So he's already beginning to be able to tell you several sort of different things about what's going on.
Oh dear, you're telling me, aren't you? You're telling me what you're doing? Oh dear, and you've just had a clean one on. I know what you've done. Come on. I think I know more today because last night I went to feed him and he didn't want feeding. It was his nappy he wanted changing. So I didn't know the difference between those cries, but I think I will again. But until it happens, I don't know, because I got him out and got all ready to feed him. When I picked him up, he had a dirty nappy. So I went and changed his nappy and put him down then, and he went off to sleep. So had I known the difference between the two cries, I could have saved myself the trouble of getting all ready to feed him. James, come on. Come on. James.
At the end of the week, we asked Helen exactly the same question. Did James know her?
Oh, yes.
Did he know you right away?
I don't know. I felt he did. You know, that I felt there was an immediate bond between us.
But you're sure he knows you now?
Oh, definitely.
We have tried to show how James reacts to things he sees, hears, smells and tastes. And of course he's sensitive to many other things as well: touch, pain, perception of where his limbs are, temperature, and probably much more. Each mother is going to respond to her own baby in a totally individual way. But we wondered whether Helen had learnt anything from what we've been able to show her of James' behaviour over the first week.
Watch them, just watch them. The little things they do that you don't think mean anything, but I think they really do. Their eyes, and talk to them and cuddle them. That's all really. It is just getting to know each other.